Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
Well, I asked earlier if there was anybody joining us for the first time. Welcome. Thank you.
I came once. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Welcome to you again, welcome to everyone. Before we hear from our speaker today, it's our tradition to go around the room and say our names. I'll go ahead and begin if I may. My name is Roy.
Omar.
Ethan.
Francesco.
Juan.
Prasada Chitta.
Don.
Jay.
My name is Joe. My name is Lee.
Donald.
Peter.
Tim.
Richard.
Michael.
Risha.
Jack.
Tony.
I'm Richard.
My name is Cass.
I'm Brad.
I'm Jim.
And Mark will be setting up right now. He'll be joining us in a little bit. It's my pleasure to introduce Padmatara, who is a member of the Triratna Buddhist Order and the Center Director here at the San Francisco Buddhist Center. She began meditating in 1989 in an effort to give up smoking, and it worked eventually. She now teaches meditation in Buddhism and leads retreats at the SFBC and other Triratna centers. She's currently particularly interested in using communication and improvisation to deepen practice and is training in focusing, a mindful self-therapy based on cultivating kind awareness towards all our experience. Welcome, Padmatara.
Thank you. Thank you. It's really nice to be here. It's taken me a long time to get here. But I really do value the relationship that our centre has with you. We all do, actually. It's lovely having you here. Such a nice atmosphere every Sunday morning, and you kind of add to the vibe that's in this shrine room. I was thinking and I apologise, by the way, for getting up and going out, but I heard something fall, I thought, and then I could hear my dog barking, so I had this image of him trapped in some sort of Lassie movie type situation. So I thought it was better to go and deal with that. He was fine, but I was also thinking, I know some of you have been coming here for a long, long time. I don't know if you remember that it used to be when it rained, we had to get out 6 or 7 buckets and catch drips. So I always have a little bit of a trepidation, but it seems to be holding.
By the way, though, right where Lee is, the gentleman in the green pants who's with the outstretched legs, when I was setting up, there was like drops. I said something might be coming through that light right there.
Oh,
so
really?
Just in case. I mentioned it.
Okay, that was... Okay, thanks. I think I know where that is.
Okay.
Deal with that later. Our caretakers can do. Okay, so I wasn't sure what to call this talk, but I've settled for the moment on remembering to remember. That's what I'm going to talk about today. And I wanted to begin with a poem which has been helpful in remembering when I want to remember. And coincidentally, Prasada Chitta has been memorizing it recently, so I thought I'd ask him to recite the poem. It's called Everything is Waiting for You by David White.
Your great mistake is to act the drama as if you were alone, as if life were a progressive and cunning crime with no witnesses to the tiny hidden transgressions. To feel abandoned is to deny the intimacy of your surroundings. Surely, even you, at times, have felt the grand array, the swelling presence and the chorus crowding out your solo voice, You must notice the way the soap dish enables you and the window latch grants you freedom. Alertness is the hidden discipline of familiarity. The stairs are your mentor of things to come. The doors have always been there to frighten you and invite you. And this tiny speaker in the phone is your dream ladder to divinity. Put down the weight of your aloneness and ease into the conversation. The kettle is singing even as it pours you a drink. The cooking pots have left their arrogant aloofness and seen the good in you at last. All the birds and creatures of the world are unutterably themselves. Everything is waiting for you.
Thank you. It's perfect. So this poem is one of two things that I'm going to talk about that have really helped me to remember what's important for me in the last year or so. Just a little bit of background that just over 2 years ago, about 2.5 years ago, a couple of important people in my life died just a month apart. And although death wasn't a new thing to me, there was something about the close proximity of these two and the particular consequences that really hammered home the truth of impermanence for me in a way I hadn't experienced before. And it seemed at the time, I remember saying, that I could feel it in my bones. I could feel in my bones that I wasn't always going to be here, that I was dying too. And it felt like a gift from them that I really wanted to honour and live by. So along with some deep grief, I also felt a strange relief for a while. Similar, I think, to the way some people say they feel when they find that they don't have long to live. There was a kind of letting go or letting be that felt like an unburdening. And I think it happens a lot. Some event just stops us in our tracks, and for whatever reason, rather than provoking fear and insecurity and a kind of scrambling to get on our feet again right away, they crack us open for a while and transform our understanding. And gradually that bodily understanding faded into the background again, and I felt less raw, which was nice, but some of the old dis-ease came back, and the feeling that I'd forgotten something really important sort of nagged at me. So it's like there's a very subtle habitual effort to ignore the truth. I don't think the insight has gone that I got from that, but I need to make some effort to stay in relationship to it and let that relationship guide my life. So there's a teaching in Buddhism, the 4 reminders, or mind turnings, or they're sometimes called the preliminaries, and they come before the threefold path of ethics, meditation and wisdom, because it's thought that until we have them at the forefront of our consciousness, we won't be motivated to live by them, and we won't be motivated enough to practice. So the traditional reminders are the precious opportunity offered by human life, so not putting things off till later, death and impermanence, karma, or the fact that actions have consequences, which I find easy to forget, strangely, and the disadvantages of samsara, or the inevitability of suffering, or just the fact that suffering will be a part of all our lives, as well as other things. So I doubt that these are news to anybody here, and they're not difficult to understand, like a lot of the teachings. They're fairly straightforward. But if our understanding is only intellectual, if we just have an intellectual understanding of them, then they tend to easily slip out of awareness. And we fall into what Buddhism calls the topsy-turvy views So we think that we can put off practicing with them till later, some later time. But by turning them over and over in our minds regularly, we kind of hammer them home and allow them to crack us open. So we don't need to rely so much on external events, external life-changing events to motivate us and jolt us into practicing. And when those events do happen, we'll be better able to respond through this practice. Lassiter, the founder of the Triratna Buddhist community, puts it that they're a way of finding emotional equivalents for our intellectual understanding. And if we can do that, find an emotional connection with a teaching, it'll have a much greater influence on us. So when I felt that I was losing touch with that bone-deep understanding that I won't always be here, that I felt for a while, I came back to the idea of the 4 reminders, looking for ways to reconnect with it. I wanted to learn to stay at the edge and not slip into comforting old habits and forget. So 2 main things, and a lot of other things that helped me with this are the poem that Lassiter read, along with a talk that David White gave around this poem that I'll talk about, called The Conversational Nature of Reality. And the other thing is a guideline from the world of improv theatre, which is yes and, or accepting and not blocking any offer that's made by your partner on stage. And neither of these are traditionally Buddhist, exactly, but for some reason, for me, they bring these reminders and other Buddhist teachings to life and make them more instantly accessible at times when I'm having difficulty. And they're just easier to bring to mind in the moment that I need something than like the 4 Noble Truths or the refrain from the Satipatthana Sutta or any of the wonderful teachings that unfortunately don't have an immediate effect on me when I need that jolt to get me unstuck from a kind of road that I'm going down. At the very least, they give me something to do other than react badly when I'm finding things difficult. So first, yes, and it turns out, many of you may know this, but it turns out that improv is not about being funny, as I had thought. But there's a lot of wisdom to it. It's very related to practices that we do here, in fact. So it's about things like being present and listening rather than planning what you're going to do next, and allowing things to unfold rather than trying to take control of the outcome. Being spontaneous, and these are all things that I'm not very good at. So I took a few classes, in fact, got a little bit hooked on it, even though I never, I can honestly say I was never very good at it, because some mechanism in my brain made me forget everything I'd learned as soon as I got up on stage. So but I did learn a lot. And yes and is the first thing that we learn in class, pretty much, and is the basis of a lot of what they do. So it's a simple guideline, but like a lot of things, it's a big deal to put into practice. So it's in 2 parts. First you say yes, you agree with whatever your partner has created on stage. This is the thing, Jay, that you reminded me of. You were talking about saying yes rather than why. So you say yes. Whatever your partner comes up with, you agree on stage. So if we're improvising a scene and I say to my partner something like, oh, nice ball gown you're wearing, and they say, I'm not wearing a ball gown, kind of grinds to a halt, so there's no scene happening there. But if I say nice ball gown and they say, oh thanks, I like to look good even on retreats, then we've started a scene. So the benefit of saying yes, it's kind of an open mind, it's welcoming, there's new ideas and possibilities. The second part, not only to say yes, but to say yes and. So you're supposed to then add something of your own. So it doesn't just stop with, yes, this is how it is, but there's a continuum. So, nice ball gown. Yes, I like to look good on retreat. So that's another offer. They've given a location, they call it, and the other person can go with it. Yes, I bet all that fabric helps with the mosquitoes when you meditate. And the opposite of yes and is blocking, not accepting the offer. So when they said, I'm not wearing a ball gown, it kind of kills the scene, and it happens an awful lot in class. I think everybody in that first class really was surprised at how often the impulse is to block. And in improv they say that we do this because we think conflict is more interesting than acceptance and going along with things. And in fact, they say it isn't more interesting. It's more interesting for people to watch us on stage being healthy, happy, normal, they call it. So the aim is not to try to be funny, but we're supposed to focus on making our partner look good. And it was really helpful to try and have that focus. To the extent that I was able to remember to do that, it actually took away some of my self-consciousness and anxiety. So yeah, when I learned about this, I started to notice how often I block people in life, and it can be quite subtle, but just some way to sort of try wanting to get my point across, wanting to go with my idea, and just not listening or withdrawing when it feels uncomfortable rather than staying engaged. And I noticed how unsatisfying that was. So I started trying to yes and people in conversation and kind of keep the connection flowing, and somewhat let go of the outcome. So it's quite relaxing to drop any idea of having to be right and just focus on the other person. And it also reminds me that I don't know what will happen, which is so much less scary than thinking I do know, surprisingly. So I can trust life to unfold rather than fighting it and trying to block it. It may not always be appropriate to say yes, and of course we might need to block at times, and that's fine too. But we can notice how we respond to people and situations, and just try playing with this a bit. It's fun actually, and it's a lot harder than it sounds, I found anyway. And I rarely remember till afterwards, but occasionally, because of that same brain mechanism I think. But when I do it, it really changes things and it opens up the conversation rather than shutting things down. So it keeps me engaged and connected rather than defensive and isolated. So maybe the connection to Buddhism is obvious, I'm not sure, but for me it expresses an acceptance of impermanence and change, a letting go and a loosening of that tight fist of control. It's also an acknowledgement of interconnectedness. So not only trusting the unfolding of life, but understanding that it only unfolds in relationship to an infinite number of things, including other people. So we can't take experience out of that context, out of the context of relationship. And every action that we take has tendrils and connections and harmonies and dissonances. So mindfulness is a great teaching that it would be good to remember for me. I don't think it's stretching it too far to say it's really just this, just saying yes. And because mindfulness doesn't block, it doesn't have an agenda, and it doesn't mean we love everything that's happening, but it does mean we can include what's happening and make room of it, and that has a softening effect. Because mindfulness is a very positive quality, and if we're mindfulness of something, even if it's something like a very negative frame of mind, it naturally brings a positivity to that experience and creates a space around it. So I'm trying to yes and my experience, trying not to block anything with judgment and limit what I see, trying to be more receptive to what's happening both externally and internally. And try to do that as it happens and as it's changing. So if I can say yes to my emotions, for example, I can build a relationship with them and allow them to soften. And the and reminds me that they're not solid and they're not fixed. And they're a process and they change. So we often block our emotions by kind of criticizing them before they've even had time to be felt. So saying things like, I shouldn't feel jealous, or I'm really tired of feeling sad. So we're creating a little internal war with that. So with mindfulness we can include the feelings, and we can also include the feelings about the feelings without getting lost in them. And there's plenty of room to let them come and go in their own time. So saying yes, we're much more likely to see beyond our habitual limiting views and stories. And saying and reminds us that we're always unfolding. So it just sort of keeps us from getting stuck continually. And underneath the stories and the emotions, we can open up also to our physical sensations and our energies and see how any kind of physical discomfort is also made up of all different kinds of changing sensations that come and go, rather than one long, uncomfortable experience. So we can begin to see what we've been missing. And we are constantly missing things. We miss particularly the changes that are happening. There's lots of funny YouTube videos of experiments that people have done to show just how much we miss in our lives. Gorillas crossing basketball courts and things like that. So the more we think we already know, the more we exclude from our experience. And our brain has the ability to convince us of just about anything. It saves time also by making assumptions and imposing past patterns that we've learned onto present events and ignoring much of what's happening around us. And that's how magicians do magic tricks. They draw our attention to something that they want us to see so that we don't see the rabbit hopping away. So the rabbit seems to disappear from the hat, but it's actually in full view, but we're looking at something else. So it's the same with other things, that we tend to be drawn, I guess, by the big things in life, mainly things that we really want, we notice, and things that we really don't want kind of grab our attention, so that the whole vast range of the rest of our experience is just happening unawares. All the rich surroundings and the rabbits are hopping around without us seeing them. So the beauty of yes and here is that it opens up that view so that we see all the other possibilities we wouldn't habitually see, and gets us out of a rut of our view. So it reminds me that what I think is happening is changing even as I'm having the thought about what's happening. So if I give something a label, I try to remember that it's only a functional label. It's useful to tell people what's happening, but it's never the whole story. So there's a related teaching about labels, about signlessness, that you may have heard. It's so the three lakshanas, impermanence, insubstantiality, and unsatisfactoriness, or characteristics of existence, are also each a gateway to liberation, or vimoksha. For some reason I like that word, vimoksha. So the vimoksha relating to impermanence is the signless or imageless, and nimitta. So basically, on the other side of impermanence, when we really, really turn it over in our minds and really get it on all levels, we no longer feel the need to label things in quite the same way with words or thoughts. We don't need to add to the experience or block it with by calling it something. It's said that we've transcended the level of concepts and we experience reality directly. So labels can be a way of blocking, reifying or concretizing things and keeping them separate and ignoring the constant movements and interconnectedness of things. If I give something a name, there's a danger that I think I'll know it and I'll stop being interested in it and stop listening to what it might have to tell me. So there's a kind of pigeonholing that can be limiting, and even quite violent in some ways. So even impermanence itself can be mistaken for a thing. It might be better as a verb, which is why change is often used. So it isn't an inconvenient thing that's out there happening to us. We are impermanence, we are change. And our senses are changing along with what they're sensing. So we're kind of constantly tuning and retuning in response to countless conditions. I find this quite exciting. It's not that change is happening to us. There's no part of us that is not changing. So we're constantly moving, affecting, and being affected. And we're never, this basically means we're never separate. We're always in relationship to something. So what we experience and the way we think and feel about it, all changing all the time, changing, being changed by everything it meets. And there's something very freeing about this, experimenting with it. So, trying not to block, to see beyond labels. I'm trying to remember to be curious and stop telling things what they are, telling people what they are or what they should be, and allowing them instead to reveal themselves to me in their own time. I'm working on being okay with the uncertainty of not knowing. And when I hear myself making generalized statements, which I do a lot, that was one of them, I try to pause and question them. Do I really know that? Can I really say it's true? Is it always the case? I'm noticing how often I label things according to their function for me, so how they relate to me, for my cup, my friend, my enemy, my past, my future. So I kind of impose me as the central reference point for everything and block other possibilities. I hear things according to how they affect me rather than what's actually happening. So yes, and reminds me that I don't know. Not knowing is the most intimate. It's one of my favourite sayings from the Zen school. If I can remember I don't know, I'm open to possibilities. And when I'm not blocking, I have something like beginner's mind. So no prejudice, judging, assumptions or expectations. I'm not trying to attempt to control my experience or manipulate it, and it feels like freedom. The labels are useful, they have a function, but I want to be sure I'm not mistaking the label for the whole thing, for the whole flow of experience that the labels are pointing to. They're like pointing, the finger pointing at the moon, they're pointing to something else, they're not the thing itself. Another teaching along these lines, this is almost the last thing I'm going to talk about. Something else that I want to remember comes from Gregory Kramer. I don't know if you've heard of this guy. He writes about insight dialogue, and he calls it interrelational meditation. So again, it's all about recognizing that we're in relationship and that we need more than just sitting in meditation. And he wanted to create a bridge between the two, so we could talk about what's happening right now as it's happening and talk about insights that we're having without the conversation getting taken over by our usual habits and self-referential ways. And the framework has 6 instructions: pause, relax, open, trust emergence, listen deeply, and speak the truth. So lots of pausing, really listening, being receptive and honest, and they're all really useful, and there's a lot more to it. I would recommend it if you're interested. But the thing I was particularly interested in was this step of trusting emergence. It's the thing I most wanted to remember, sitting at the edge of impermanence, he called it. So putting aside our agendas, our me project, and our habitual planning, and sitting at the edge of impermanence. Trusting emergence. Trusting our capacity to be with the instability of things, not resisting, not knowing, not planning, and letting go into the changing nature of things. So I don't know if he had done any improv, but it's very similar, I felt, to the yes and guideline. And I was always inspired by this particular teaching, but when I made the connection with yes and it became easier to remember. I could remember it more quickly. So again, when I'm in conversation or when I'm just sitting, I can try to be receptive to what's happening, listening without arguing or strategizing or fixing, and just staying interested in what's happening in the relationships and the connections and every sensation and thought or word and being affected, affecting each other, being affected. He actually leads retreats where we do this and try and talk about like our lips moving while we're talking. It's very trippy. I don't know how I ever thought I had control over all that, but I did. Finally. So I love this image of sitting at the edge and opening to what's happening and not knowing, trusting, responding rather than planning. It is a little bit scary, like improv, but it actually removes a whole layer of effort and tightness. And that brings me finally to the conversational nature of reality and the poem that Padmatara read. So the talk, I'm just going to say a few notes from the talk that David White gave around this. It's a really good talk. I think it's a TEDx talk. So he talks about this whole thing in terms of staying in conversation. So we change the world by meeting it, by being present, simply by beginning a conversation, either verbal or by simply being present, attentively present, listening. And the observer moves the world by the way they see the world. Quotes somebody, I can't remember, I'm afraid, path maker, there is no path, you make the path by walking. Everything is affected by the way we stand. Come out from behind the wall you've set up that you call you and meet something other than yourself. He quotes Wu Wei Wu, which I do remember because, like David White, I hadn't realised this guy was Irish that called himself Wu Wei Wu. Anyway, he says, why are you unhappy? Because 98.8% of everything you do and all that you say is for yourself, and there isn't one. No self will survive a real conversation. Instead of seeing ourselves as something to fire at the world like ammunition, we can join the conversation of reality. Put down the weight of your aloneness and ease into the conversation. Everything is waiting for you. And he points out that this is a wonderful thing. Everything is waiting for you. And also death is one of those things waiting. Death is also part of the conversation. So I love this way of talking about the flow of conditions as a conversation that we can engage with, that we can yes and, or we can block. And it's been a great reminder for me, whatever else I might do and however I feel about the world and people and myself and reality, life and the universe and everything, I can accept their offer, I can trust emergence, and I can choose to come out from behind the wall I set up and ease into the conversation. I thought maybe if you would read that poem again, that's just to end with. Sorry, not read, recite the poem.
Your great mistake is to act the drama as if you were alone. As if life were a progressive and cunning crime with no witnesses to the tiny, hidden transgressions. To feel abandoned is to deny the intimacy of your surroundings. Surely, even you, at times, have felt the grand array, the swelling presence, and the chorus, crowding out your solo voice. You must notice how the soap dish enables you, and the window latch grants you freedom. Alertness is the hidden discipline of familiarity. The stairs are your mentor of things to come. The doors have always been there to frighten you and invite you. And the tiny speaker in the phone is your dream ladder to divinity. Put down the weight of your aloneness and ease into the conversation. The kettle is singing even as it pours you a drink. The cooking pots have left their arrogant aloofness and seen the good in you at last. All the birds and creatures of the world are unutterably themselves. Everything is waiting for you.
What is the name of the poem?
It's called Everything is Waiting for You by David White.
Is that white or white?
White. W-H-Y-T-E. And the talk that he gives, which it's about 6 minutes, I think, it's called The Conversational Nature of Reality. It's very good.
6 minutes talk, that sounds great.
I know, doesn't it?
Speaking of 6 minutes, we still have about 6 to 10 minutes for
Wow,
questions. or
awesome.
answers.
Yeah, yes. If anyone has any questions. Or anything that I was interested, I actually thought there was going to be more time left at the end, but to get into groups and talk about what you would like to remember or what's important and ways that you remember things that are important. And maybe playing around with the yes and blocking, just noticing that while you're talking. Since there isn't time for that, you could, if you wanted to share. Yes?
My question for you is, do you continue to seek opportunities for improvising? And do you do this with close friends and family? For example, there's always little dramettes with family.
Pretty reliable.
and even friends.
Yeah.
And so I was just wondering, would yes and setting it up, would that be an appropriate way to practice?
I think that would be a fantastic way to practice, yeah, because they're situations that are familiar to you in some ways are really good places to sort of at least go in with the intention finding something to say yes to and something to yes and there. Just have that intention. And like I say, for me, I tend to forget when I'm in the, what's going on more often than not. So afterwards, I think, I try and catch it as early as I can, and rather than going off then into, I should have yes anded, I can quite just gently come back to finding an opportunity to accept that offer, what's happening there. That makes sense. So yeah, I think I'd be interested to see how that goes. Yeah.
Thank you for your talk. I latched on to the idea of this, like everyone's changing right now, we're all changing, reacting, responding to things and people and each other, really like that. And yes, I really. And I just had a conversation last night with a friend about impermanence, because we were talking about the being on the other side, the last half of life, as opposed to the first half of life, and aging and impermanence. And a friend of mine passed away a week ago. He just at 52, he just collapsed with a heart attack and died, and left his partner and daughter. And so I've been on the phone a lot with his partner, my friend, crying on the phone a lot, and dealing with that jarring thing that happens, And I was just, when you were talking, I was toying with this idea, like, yes, we are alive and we are dying. Yes, we are dying and we are alive. It's like this paradox, It's like, and listening to him, every time I go to call him, I have to like just take a breath, because I don't know what's going to happen when we're talking, and it feels so awkward because it's such an intense situation. And so I like that idea. I'm going to try it, and the kind of like just listening, yes, and not. It's hard not to plan, like, oh, I think I can say this, or I might talk about that, or I might ask him this, or I wonder, or should I text him to see if he wants to talk, just put it out there.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I mean, I do think that's is often what we need, is someone just to. It sounds just the way that you're talking, like you're present. You're just allowing yourself to be present and noticing that desire to maybe come up with the right thing to do, and knowing that you may not know it, that you can just be there with what you. I think that's a great way of putting it. Thank you. And I'm sorry for you. Yeah.
So this is sort of in relationship to the poem. It reminded me of, I subscribe to the Tricycle's daily narrative, and it strikes me as, so the poem seemed to be about our connection, and the one today struck me about the other side of it, the sense of nagging inauthenticity about my narrative self. The sense, when it comes down to it, my story is a lie, resists. And one of the great joys of meditation is that it offers an opportunity to put the story aside for a while and abide briefly in the images. And it nice. Just, it sort of struck me strongly this morning that, is there a me?
Right.
Separate from, or even not separate? It's very confusing.
Right. A very good question to keep in mind, isn't it? So, yeah. I'm not going to try and answer it, by the way.
Yes. I love thank you for your very helpful talk. I love, trying to remember it. It's so poignant. On Thursday night in the rain, I'm a good leaper, so there was a big puddle, and I leapt. But my back foot slid backwards when I leapt, so I just torn the hell out of my groin. So I've been hobbling around for 3 days. And then last night, there was a puddle, and I leapt again. I had no memory. I find that discouraging, and this comment. Anyway, this is a great talk. I love the yes and.
Yeah, no, it's really Yeah, I have experienced the same thing. I think Einstein describes that as somebody says that's the definition of insanity, when we make a mistake and then keep repeating, expecting a different outcome. But to forget altogether, there's very little you can do about that, isn't there? It's what you do, I suppose, when you do become aware that second time. Yeah. So, yeah.
The importance of the pause. I grew up in the Northeast where everybody talks rapidly, and interrupting each other is not considered rude, it's considered engaged. And my partner grew up in California, and we've been together. He speaks much more slowly, and if you ask him a question, you don't get an immediate answer. And even after 15 years of living with him, and actually admiring this way of being, I still find when he's pausing that I'm wanting to say, hurry up! Or trying to anticipate what he's going to say. But 15 years is...
It takes a while. Yeah, I mean, it's good to recognise that, isn't it? We do all have different styles of doing it, and they're not, what somebody is doing is not necessarily what we perceive them as doing. Like, it's a slightly different thing, but I know that I have, I'm a bit of an introvert, quite quiet a lot of the time. And I know there are people who are more extrovert that have told me they basically think I'm sitting in silent judgment of them, which I'm not. I'm just sort of thinking and enjoying the internal whatever that's going on. But so I guess asking somebody what they need is a good idea. But yeah, thank you for that.
Would you remind us again the yes and staying at the edge of?
For me, they're basically yes and, not blocking, and staying in the conversation are the three main ones. And the traditional ones are slightly different. But those three help me to remember all the other things in Buddhism that are important to remember. I think that was it. I've forgotten. Sorry, you have a question.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that I took an improv class as well.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
I thought I saw you looking like you knew what it is. Yeah.
And it's funny because in the Sangha that I go every week, I always tell them to actually dig into improv, because I had the same feeling that you just described. So I really resonate with your talk, and I really thank you for that. And something else that it came to my mind during the talk as well was that I also resonate with the problem that you have on the stage, especially with improv. It's so hard. Although, I think that's a lot. It has a lot to do with the way that I feel attached to my ego when I'm in public, and especially when I cannot prepare for that, right? Because I need to react at the moment to what I'm receiving from the environment. And I think it's really hard to. Even if you remember, I think that's also related to the pause that, like you just said, it's hard. Sometimes you really feel like you're blocking everything because you're so attached to your ego, right? And I was wondering if you have some trick that helps you to solve this.
I wish. Yeah, I didn't. It's almost like it's a survival mechanism kicks in. As I'll be walking up to the stage, I'm going to make the other person look good, I'm going to make the other person look good, and I'll get up there. It's just like something else happens. So I don't exactly, but I do think all of this stuff eventually, I'm hoping that will sink in, so that it's, it sort of cuts through that reptilian brain instinct. That's what I'm hoping. And it has happened a few times, not on stage, but off stage when we're doing a little partnership exercise. Because I don't know, maybe we should do some improv next time. But everything is aimed at getting that out of the way, that idea that we have to be something, that we have to be on, that we have to present something. So all the classes are really aimed at doing that. I don't know how many hours I spent doing it, and it hasn't quite gone in there yet, but I appreciate it and I aspire to it. So good luck.
We have time for maybe one more question. We're almost there. Anybody else? Last one.
I'll just say that about improvisation, that's what you do in about 70% of your life, your whole life. I mean, I've thought of sometimes if you're able to plan out what you want to do, the big picture and then the daily picture, for maybe if that much, and the rest is improvisation.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so if you're aware of that, then you can practice it in everything you do.
You can.
Somebody wonderful walks through the door. Well, also it's related to the nature of change. I mean, impermanence always seems to have this negative connotation. Oh, I'm going to die, or somebody I love is going to die.
Yeah.
It's wonderful that things change. You can experience a great dinner more than once.
Yeah.
And well, anyway, I'm not going to preach about that, but it's great that things change.
Yes, it is.
That's the nature of life.
Yeah.
You're dead. You don't change.
Yeah.
So,
as far as we know.
So far.
And on that note, thank you, Padmatara.
Thank you. It was lovely to be here. Thanks very much.
Okay, so let's wrap things up. A couple of announcements now. Let's see. Okay, next week, March 20th, Jennifer Barazon is coming. And for anyone who has experienced her, she's a lot of fun. She's a beautiful singer and weaves Dharma talk with her singing and guitar. So if you've never experienced her, I highly suggest you come. So Jennifer Barazon, March 20th. And Dharma is the Pali word for giving. And we have, we pay our rent here. We have the newsletter that we send out. We pay for our speakers, the Larkin Street dinners, mailers, and all. The suggested donation is anywhere from $7 to $10, but please give what you feel comfortable giving. It's greatly appreciated. Let's see, our host, I believe, is Mark. Can I hear from you?
Yes, welcome everyone. Please, there's a little food. Please help yourself to that and to tea, hot tea. But if you do drink tea, just wash your cup out with warm sudsy water and rinse at the kitchen. There is I believe there's a sign-up sheet on Credenza if people are interested in staying connected with the Sangha. And some of us meet at 12:30 at the door to head out for lunch. I think that's it. We have social period between about half an hour from 12 to 12:30.
Thank you.
I would like to share that that's been your announcement for a long time, but we have a dishwasher and you can just stick it. You can just put your hop in the dishwasher.
Change.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yes, dishwasher.
Thank you for that. Anyone else? Okay, let's please stand for the dedication prayer. Would you like to read ours?
Oh, I'd like to read yours.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Sorry, got all this stuff.
Oh, that's
Oops. By the power and truth of this practice, may all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all be free from sorrow and the causes of sorrow. May all never be separated from the sacred happiness which is without sorrow. And may all live in equanimity, without too much attachment or too much aversion, believing in the equality of all that lives.
Thank you again, everyone, for coming today, braving the weather. Enjoy your Sunday.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.